Oh, I haven't warmed my throat up. We're meant to do it. Oh, look at that. That's really annoying, isn't it? That little bit there. That. I want to move it, but it's going to mess it all up. Hello, welcome. Oh, look. Welcome to Real Magic Review. My name is Steve Faulkner. And before I start, I'm going to balance it. I've got like a boom thing here for that camera. I'm giving it all away. Oh, look what a mess. Welcome to Real Magic Review. My name is Steve Faulkner, and as you well know, and this is going to be a little waffle about my show recently, because I thought it'd be, how can I not talk about it? It's fresh. It's, it's something that is on my mind a lot, and it was new, and there was scary stuff in it. But before we do that, I'd like to say, after this, can you please have a look at onlinemagic.co? This is the thing that fuels the whole thing. I could have a Patreon account, but actually, this thing's been going 10 years. There's live sessions every week, special guests, are all uploaded, and over 800 videos on there of card moves, a whole course that I'm currently making on the Royal Road to Card Magic, and I've got about that much left. Everything in that book is just one of the courses that you get for your $9.99 a month. So have a look at that, onlinemagic.co, lovely community as well, and a great, I'm very proud of it. I'm very, very proud of it. That's what I am. And like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the little bell icon, because there are times at the moment, life is ridiculously hectic, where I can't go live at this time, so at least you'll know and you won't turn up. And I also go live at random times, which is quite fun. I'm going to go live now and talk about that. So you'll get notifications of that. So next to the subscribe button, little bell icon. And finally, there's one more thing I was going to say. Can't remember what it is. No. Oh yeah, that was it. I've got courses, free courses. I always forget to mention them, and they're decent. They're not kind of, lead magnets where I want people's email address. Obviously I do, but give them something rubbish that they're never going to look at. The Introduction to Card Magic course is great. Some banging tricks on there and some really good advice that I use myself, because I said it, for performing those tricks for the first time, getting over nerves, etc. And a Spread Cull course for those of you that are more advanced. But anyway, God, that was a big old waffle, wasn't it? Thanks everyone for waiting. Look at this, we've got Steve Myers. Hello, lovely Steve Myers. Nice to see you there. Shiv. Hello, lovely Shiv. Bruce. Tom. Nice to see you. Gary. And Bruce. Lovely Bruce. Stuart. How are you, mate? Flipped Over Productions. Hello, Sandy. Nice to see you. And thanks very much, for showing up. I'm rubbish at I should publicise these and put them all over social media more. But it all takes a lot of time, doesn't it? Time I haven't got. But that's an excuse, maybe. Right, so what I just did a show called Magician, and the reason I named that show, and I think this is important and useful for some people if you're thinking of doing the first one-man show, or you're even some of this will help if you're just doing close-up for the first time, or doing your first trick, or you've never performed a magic trick. It's kind of the same stuff, and it's the stuff that I want you to know I go through, and a complete beginner will go through as well. There isn't really much difference in that. I lack self-belief so much, a huge lack of self-belief, so I'm always completely doubting myself. So those of you that I talk to quite often that struggle with that as well, you are not alone. So I called the show Magician for a couple of reasons. I booked the show in before I knew exactly what the show was going to be, and Magician was quite ambiguous, and a lot of people here kind of know that I'm a magician in my local area, and it was in my local area. It's a venue that I've done shows before. But they also know I'm a speaker, and I've done business coaching and stuff like that. And this was really about me getting back to the magic tricks I love, and not overthinking about meaning and things like that. Just what do I love? What are the tricks that I love unashamedly, that some people may call guilty pleasures, some of them. And I want to put them in the show. And it was a bit of a midlife crisis sort of show, because within that, there were loads of tricks that I'd become quite scared of performing, because they were too challenging when I started trying to perform them, and because they're too challenging now when I try and perform now. And there's a lot of self-belief wrapped up in those routines as well, sort of lack of self-belief. So a lot of them are kind of manipulation based. I've always said, no, I've got no grace, I've got no style for being a manipulator. I'm a kind of comedy clown kind of thing. And a lot of my training was in kind of physical comedy and street theatre and things like that. So, who am I to do something that's, really challenging and finicky and fiddly? So the first part of that, and this is kind of advice, but remember with advice, this is what helped me. The problem, and one of the things I've got, which I might as well start with, is that when you're putting together a routine, or some tricks to do close-up with, or performing your first trick and thinking about scripting, it's very, very easy to ask a lot of people, loads of people, advice, and to buy loads of books. So for an example of that is that I've decided to do stand-up comedy again for the first time in 20 years, or try it again. You know, I kind of did it for a while, many, many years ago, did okay, but never really had a decent set, and kind of, you know, gave up. This is with no magic or anything. And I'm booked in an open spot in a couple of months. And what I've noticed of doing, I'm buying all the books, I'm asking all the people, I'm talking to all the people, and I realise that's a kind of form of procrastination. I'm looking for the answer subconsciously. I'm looking for someone to say, if you do this, you're going to storm it. And of course, there is no answer, you know, you have to do it. Yes, you can find a few trusted people, but I think a lot of us, and I've noticed, are looking for that, you know, what will make it easy. And the fact of the matter is, doing new material isn't easy. And you could argue that there's two sides to this. I think doing new material as a complete beginner is harder because you're not used to performing, so you've got all that. But doing new material as an established performer is hard because of different reasons, because there's an expectation. And the show I did here, I've talked about this before, scared the life out of me. I never ever get as nervous as I do performing even established routines to people who know me. I've got friends there, I've got family, my partner was there, my kids were there, like nightmare. Magicians were there, members of my course that watch this, that I'm teaching you. So what if I die on my ass in front of them? How's that going to look? They're paying me monthly to teach them as a professional performer. That's what I bang on about. You're learning from a pro. And what if all this stuff goes wrong? I mean, it was terrifying. I cannot explain the nerves. And it's ridiculous because all those people would have been lovely if it hadn't have gone well, and supportive, and actually as an audience, it's the best audience because you get that love. But I remember, you know, usually I warm into a show within 5 minutes, I'm fine. Half time at the interval, I was still like, is it going well? I don't know, I can't eat. No, it still wasn't, it was that terrifying for me. So know that if you're experiencing that, that is very, very normal to feel that fear. And with new material, what you will do, and I'm saying this to established acts as well, the closer you get to that date of performing your new stuff, if it's for the public, if it's for a corporate gig, the more excuses you're going to find to not do it. And I tell you, on stage, there were 3 occurrences on stage in real time, just as I was walking into those routines. One was a Miser's Dream routine, one was a linking ring routine, my cone and ball routine. All of those I've performed a version of before, but not in this way. And I was absolutely like, if this goes wrong, it's going to be disastrous. There's kind of no way out. I feel so scared doing routines to music. It's totally out of my comfort zone. If I drop, I can't stop and start talking to the audience. So in those times, I stopped myself nearly and just went, I'm not doing it. In my mind, I just thought, you know, just get on, do a generic routine, do a thing that I've done for ages. But I made myself do it, and there's one routine that I did, my cone and ball, that at the end of it, I actually said to the audience, thank F for that. I got to the end of it because I was so relieved it was over. So there's that. So advice is there within all that rambling that I've just saying is, if you're going to do something, book it in. If you want to do a one-man show, book a one-man show in 8 months' time. One-person show, sorry, I do apologise. One-woman show. Put it in 8 months' time, 6 months, whatever it is, and have that deadline and start advertising it. People do this at Edinburgh all the time with Edinburgh shows. So pick a title that kind of works for you, so you're not, because you might change your mind at where you want to go. So with that, there is a level of commitment you need. Now I have what I try and do is sort of, you know, try and pick quite early on what I'm going to do, and then stick with that and go, right, I'm going to stick with that. The problem, what happened this time, is I was changing stuff a week beforehand. I knew about a few months beforehand, I was toying with doing the Miser's Dream, the cone and ball into multiplying balls, and the rings. And I kind of said it as a joke to myself, I could do them. And then I just went, no, that's actually going to be the show is going to be all these routines I love and kind of forgot about. And once I committed to that, that was locked in. The problem was, even a week before, especially with my cone and ball routine, I was going, I don't know how to start this. Do I start with that? And it was, or what music to use, or do I do it with music? And it just kind of came together at the end when I had to. I got in a room and just sort of really, really had different music on, and I was kind of panicking, but trying not to panic, and then it all kind of came together. So Have that level of commitment, make that, and if you're doing close-up and you're used to doing close-up and you want to try new things, commit to those things. Now, you don't want to, you want to give yourself a hard time is the wrong way of saying it, but you've got to embrace that discomfort. You're going to feel it. And that discomfort, a lot of people see as a message to walk away from it. It just feels so uncomfortable. And it is. I cannot describe how uncomfortable it is. And even now I go, yeah, you get nervous. It's more than that. It's like not sleeping for 3 days for me. It was the day beforehand, just not being able to function really properly at all. And everything in my body, every pore of me was just saying, stop, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Finding excuses, which of course I'm used to that, so I'm not listening to it, but I think a lot of people do. And they can get into that panic zone, which isn't healthy. So, once you commit it, understand that those feelings are to be honoured really and worked with, and not try to fight them, because they're going to be there. And yes, you can do different things to help, but just accept them. And the advice in there was obviously find a couple of people. If you can work with a director, brilliant. I worked with a director, lovely Peter Clifford, for a couple of days early on, and then I added a lot after that. So I wish I'd have had time to kind of go back and do another couple of days. But I think also not doing that gave me the opportunity to kind of go, well, I can't do that. I can't go to him. Yes, we had a couple of Zooms, but I needed to kind of be responsible. When you're trying new routines as well, again, with close-up, what I was going to do is, I'm not doing any of my kind of standard stuff. And I thought, no, don't be an idiot. Put the cups and balls in, put 2 or 3 things in that you feel comfortable enough to do, that if disaster strikes, because it might, I don't believe in pointless optimism, stuff does go wrong and can, less often than you think it's going to, then I need those things to fall back on. And how am I going to deal with that? So there was a lot of kind of rehearsal. Talking about rehearsals, I'm a terrible rehearser. I can't bear to rehearse. And I made myself this time, and it's the most rehearsal I've ever done, I think, in talking through stuff, walking through things. And the only thing that went wrong or could have gone wrong is when I decided on this cone and ball thing, I went, right, I got obsessed with practicing that, and I kind of forgot the other stuff. I should have kind of kept it all going a little bit. And then I got COVID 10 days before the show, or 15 days before the show, which meant that big kind of push of rehearsal before the show, where I closed down everything. I'm rubbish on emails. I don't answer calls. Didn't happen. I did rehearse, but it was really tough. So I think, know that might happen as well. If you're like me, everything's last minute, everything's a panic, then make sure, just say to yourself, okay, what if I get COVID a week before? So almost treat that week before, that 2 weeks before, as your deadline, I think. One of the things I would have done if I could have, and I'm going to try and do it all the time, is to do previews or try the routines out with people. Now, I did show people the Lincoln Ring routine, lay people that were friends of mine, and I trusted their judgment, and they really, really liked them. So I knew there was something in there, but I didn't get to run the show, and I'd have liked to have done that. The important thing, I think, is to know that whatever level you're at, and yes, some people, very lucky people, don't get as nervous, but there's not many people I know that don't get really, really, really nervous about this stuff. I think it's part of it, and that doing new material, I felt like a beginner, a total beginner. I felt like a child in an adult's world. I felt like, what am I doing? I questioned myself, and I think that's completely fine. Go with that. Talk to people about it, but don't let that. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's the main thing. I'm just going to check if I've a couple of other things I wanted to say is that don't overwrite. I think a lot of us, and a lot of people come to me with close-up magic tricks and say, right, I'm going to do this close-up trick. I've never done close-up. I'm going to go. I've got a residency, and they're going to let me come in and do something for free. And they go, I've got this, and they overwrite it. There's so much dialogue. We read a lot about meaning in magic, and this was also part of the show, is that we've got to put meaning into everything. And actually, I think a lot of routines, if they're beautiful, or that's what you're trying to achieve, that's enough. My Lincoln Ring routine has no meaning whatsoever, and part of the time I was going, do I have to make this kind of a thing? And I was like, no, just do it. Make it a classic trick. The multiplying balls, yes, there is a kind of silent script there now, but I think if it's beautiful, it's fine. And I think that you can get caught up in overwriting, and I think underwrite at the beginning. Let the magic speak for itself. If you're feeling chatty, chat, but don't give yourself too many restrictions with remembering loads of script, because again, some people are fine. If you're good at that, great, but I'm not. I know that if I overscript, I'm going to forget stuff, as I did in my previous show, and as I even did in this show. You have to review. I think a good review process I have, which I've talked about before, is after the show, what went well, what could have gone better, how do you feel about it, what are the next steps, and get straight back into watching what you've done, reviewing it. And I think if you can work with a director on that as well, review what you've done, be honest about it. My last show, I was so pleased with it. I thought, it's great, it's gone really well. The show I did before this, The Magic of Now, I watched it with my director and it became the running joke. It was like, Steve, shut up, you're talking so much. You know, I'd overwritten it, I was nervous. When I'm nervous, I overtalk, and it's just, I was horrified. I'm not saying it was awful, people liked it, but it just needed pulling apart. And if I hadn't done that with someone I trust that would say to me, you got to get rid of that, or something like that, I think, in a compassionate way, then I may have just stayed with that. I think you need that review process, and you have to learn to step back from it. And if you can't, which is nearly impossible to do, we all hate the sound of our own voice, then you need someone that's going to go, actually, no, that bit's okay. You know, that's just you not liking watching you on video. So really, really useful thing. Be okay with the flaws. Now, the show that I just did, I was so happy with it. Pretty much nothing went perfectly. I rehearsed my Lincoln Ring routine, and when I rehearsed it, I wasn't really ever making them, it was flow. When I did it on stage, there's something in my head going, I'm performing now. I don't get into that real flow unless I performed it like 2, 3, 4 times. And I knew how challenging that routine was for me. It's kind of Axel Heckler's routine, but I'd added a bit in the middle and remembering it and all that kind of stuff, and it had to fit with the music, which it didn't actually. You know, the music finished and I'm still doing the stuff, which is fine. I completely messed up at the beginning. Because I was nervous, you know, I handed the rings out in the wrong order. The music started, and I went, oh, no, and it was complete mess. I came off stage out of like complete mess. There's a bit where I had to pull the key ring off the chain of 3, and it got caught. I couldn't get it off. That's one of the easiest bits of the thing. All that stuff aside, the feedback was great, and we have that thing in our heads of going, you know, if something goes wrong, it's going to blow the gaff. It's like if you ever see a musician and you're not a musician, or even if you are a guitarist. I've got a friend, Martin Simpson, phenomenal guitarist, very famous, one of the best folk guitarists in the world, you know. And I haven't ever heard him go, that was terrible, but he'll kind of, you see him on stage, oh, I've done it wrong there, and I couldn't tell. And people can't. I think that we beat ourselves up. And of course, even if you expose a trick and it goes wrong, people will be compassionate as long as you don't kind of freak out. So I look back, yeah, it was all over the place, but actually the main thing was very magical in it. I didn't expose it. Cone and ball, my opening is very, I didn't get it right once without dropping, because it's got a juggling bit at the beginning with the cone and the ball. I dropped like 3 times, you know, but the other feedback from the routine, again, from people I trust, was lovely. They really liked the routine. Cups and balls, I've been doing 25 years or something. I got halfway through it and I missed a chunk out. So I had to just kind of, I went like that, thinking there was going to be a ball under, and there was an orange already, and I'd already put an orange under. I was going, hang on, I've already done it, and so I just had to kind of wedge the melon under the hat, and the random places. But again, feedback was great. Nobody knew that I'd messed it up, and it was, you know, it's not. So with all those flaws, loads of things wrong with it, loads of things I'd move around. The pacing was all over the place. It was the first draft of a show, but the feedback was great. Everybody had a good night, and you've got to be happy with that. So understand that when you do new stuff, you have to be really comfortable with the fact that you're not going to be, especially if you're established, at the top of your game in that show for a good 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 shows. You know, so it's as long as that base is good enough, and I know it's not what you don't want to aim for good enough. As long as it's a place where you're getting away with it, that's a good foundation. And I'm not saying you just got away with it. I was very proud of it. You know, it was the most difficult show I've ever done. I broke a lot of those lack of self-belief things, and I kind of feel like I've got somewhere to go with it now. And the best advice I can give is don't put it off. You know, I'm 49 now. I've put off those routines for a long time. And Joshua J said this in 6 Impossible Things. And Josh is a lot younger than me, and when he did his show, the overriding thing was, I wish I'd have done it sooner. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't really because of certain things, but I do wish I had. And one of the things that held me back was fear, not looking like a professional in front of my peers, not looking like a professional in front of people in the audience that have paid me before. And you just have to you do that Zen mind, beginner's mind thing. You're a beginner, and whatever these people think, if you start at something, you cannot help but get better at it. And it's never too late, but don't leave it too late, because regret is a terrible thing. So if you've got your tricks in your drawers like me, and you're putting off doing them, and you're telling yourself you're not quite ready, just go out, make a day, even if it's free. Go to your local pub. So I'm going to come and show a few people some tricks for nothing, just to break that mold. And if it goes disastrously wrong, which stuff I've died on my ass quite recently doing a show for a client that I'd had for a number of years, just accept it. It's horrible, but it doesn't mean it's the end of it. You just get up again, and you understand that that's part of the process. This isn't a review of it, but watching Joshua J. 6 Impossible Things, all the making of, all the tutorials of that was so useful to me, because whatever level you're at, you're doing a show off Broadway, you're still going to have all those feelings, and it made me feel a lot less alone. And I hope this, if you're on the same journey or on the same path, has allowed you to feel a lot less alone. And I'm looking forward to reporting back after my first night of stand-up early July, because I'm clearly going to die on my ass. But there you go. Right. So any questions? That was a big old waffle. Thank you again for coming along. I wanted to plan a stage parlour show for charity reasons, along with other entertainers. Yep, do it. Book it in before you've booked the other entertainers. Book it in. And you know, this show originally that I just did was going to be me, Mark Shortland, Luch, and it was going to be one of my shows that I just MC. And then Mark Shortland, months before, it's like a week after we'd said it, which is totally fine, got a really good gig, and I was like, of course. And then I just went, okay, use this as a reason to kind of get back on that solo show thing. So book it in, and you know, and then find your other entertainers. What was my opening effect, Steve? Oh, by the way, we did a whole hour, more than an hour debrief of the whole show on onlinemagic.co in my course. So and I was also teaching a routine for my show tonight, my Miser's Dream routine. So I open with the Miser's Dream, terrifying, utterly terrifying, because I'm loaded with 30 coins in baskets that have been sort of, it's kind of coin baskets that have been safely pinned in by me. And I had, walked around with them, made sure, but and I have done that routine, a version of that years ago, and I walked on stage and 30 coins fell on the stage before I started. So, you know, and I had to do it as an opener because I couldn't walk around with them 30 coins. I just wasn't confident enough. Ideally, it wouldn't have been my opener, but it's a 1 coin routine into a Miser's Dream routine with a kid from the audience. And I will one day show you the clip of getting a kid out of the audience, because it wasn't a kid's show, but there's always the odd kid in there. And I thought, I love the Miser's Dream with the kid is brilliant. Love seeing people do it. As soon as I said, you want to come out, he was terrified. And my street performing days kicked in, and I made him go from absolutely terrified to comfortable before I got him on stage. And it's something I really want to share with you, because I'm not saying, hey, I'm great. It's just years and years and years of avoiding the disaster of getting someone on stage and then being deeply uncomfortable. It's the worst thing in the world. Nobody enjoys it. And I had to work, because he was already stood up, ready to come up. He'd agreed to come up, and he was like, and I was really proud of that. And it's he had a really good time, and it was lovely. So that was Magic Man opening effect. Sounds exactly like me just now. I just need to go for it. You do, Bruce. Yeah. That's from Bruce Cameron. I don't know, Steve, if I ever see you make a mistake, I'm never going to watch again. If that's true, you wouldn't be watching this, would you? Have you seen this review show, this waffle? I don't get magic anymore. It all starts to feel the same, and learning new things doesn't seem to truly further my magic perception as a skilled performer at some point. Yeah, no, I've been through that, Spencer. I've totally been through that. I think it's a really good point. That isn't you not. I don't think that's you not getting magic anymore. I think that you probably we all get a bit stuck, and I went through years of kind of. There's a really interesting. Pete McCabe has written a really interesting article for One Ahead Rory show, which I co-hosted the podcast of recently. One Ahead, have a look at it, Rory. But Pete McCabe, who wrote Scripting Magic 1 and 2, has talked about the problem with magic reviewers and magic products in the magic marketplace. And I absolutely agree. It's if you need to edit the style of the text, are you seeing that? I'm seeing a little overlay thing, but never mind. Yeah, and he said, and we get caught up in this buying of, and that's what I wanted to do. The whole point of this show is go back to those routines I've tried to do so many times and just work on them, because I don't, we spread ourselves too thin. We're learning everything, and I love it as well. But yeah, go back. I'm not saying that's what you're saying at all, Spencer. But the Crash and Burn tour, yeah, totally. Yeah, it'd be great, wouldn't it? Garrett Thomas, the best magic is measured by who is the best story, not who tells the best story. Yes, and I think that's I think that means. I could take that a number of ways, actually. The magic is measured by who is the best story. I think it's saying that they're investing in you, I think. Tom Marquette always sooner. This is a talk I need to hear, especially today. Brilliant, Bruce. It's from Steve Meyer. Steve, I think you just needed more work. You were not comfortable. We need to be comfortable with our props. You didn't have a straight head. You were worried about too much. Just do your magic. Well, Steve, I mean, this is what I always say. I mean, me being uncomfortable isn't... Like, nobody knew I was uncomfortable. That was the big feedback. Like, everybody that saw me just said, oh, God, you look so confident. So it's all very much internalized. And I'm never going to get further than that before I start performing. I was totally comfortable with the props, except for the beginning of the Conan Ball. But I did say to people, look, I need to perform this to see how it feels like. So at the beginning, I'm going to drop, so these balls might come towards you. That wasn't a gag, and it wasn't that thing of making excuses. I did that, but it was a friendly audience. It was an audience I knew. It was a familiar audience. And no, I wouldn't have done that at a paid gig, but I introduced it as this is me. I gave myself this kind of goal, and I'm going to do it. And luckily, the free drops were fine, and it didn't kill the trick at all. So I think you're right, Steve. You do have to be comfortable with it, but I know for a fact that I cannot get more comfortable than I could before performing. The comfort now, I mean, I'm going to be way more comfortable having done it once, so it'll just get more comfortable. But I'm not, maybe not everybody's like this, but no matter how comfortable I am with the props off stage, I'm still going to have a level of discomfort the first time I ever perform them because I've never performed it. But I just have to internalize that and use my performance skills to show that isn't showing, if you see what I mean. And hopefully that from feedback, that's what I did. But you're absolutely right. Someone's told me when something goes wrong, keep smiling. Absolutely. Performing magic should not be uncomfortable for the performer. I totally disagree, Steve. I think, no, it's uncomfortable is not the right word. I think that anything brand new, that is your version of something, so you haven't got anything to really compare it to, there's always going to be a discomfort for most people before that. Maybe not when you're on stage. And I didn't feel uncomfortable on stage. I felt uncomfortable before I did the routines. But I know what you mean. But I think that discomfort is maybe the wrong word. It's a kind of apprehension. And there's a bit, when we're used to it, we use that a little bit more. Prepare for mess ups. Absolutely. Have alternative methods and lines. Increase the size of your toolkit. Yeah, which is why I always say, have the moves. Don't be a performer that only knows one way of doing something. If something goes wrong, that's why I love the Spread Cull with cards. There's always a routine that I can bring in. I had 3 or 4 routines that I could bring in that I knew just in case if something went disastrously wrong. But I think I had that, even though I'm nervous, I had that confidence that it wasn't going to be disastrous. But there's 2 things going on. There's the kind of imposter syndrome and the nerves. And then under that, there's this knowledge that you're kind of going to be all right. And that's what I mean by working with the nerves and not letting them derail you and stop you doing what you're doing. But really good point. Right, if you need to, why is it saying this thing? It's just got a big thing in the middle of my screen, which hopefully you're not seeing. But that was just my take on doing something brand new, something scary, something that was out of my comfort zone. It worked. It's flawed, but those flaws are fine because, if you ever do a show the first time and it's exactly the same 40 times later, there's probably an issue. You listen to Darren Brown or Andy Nyman talk about Darren Brown. The first bit of the tour starts and the show, a year later is very different. That's just part of the process. And that's why I think flaws are fine, not disasters, because that didn't quite work and we're kind of molding something and making it as perfect as we can. Right, so thanks very much. That was a long one, 34 minutes. Thank you so much. And this is just my experience. People are totally different. And the thing I say, as I said at the beginning, do not, just listen to one person like me say this sort of thing and go, that's the way it's going to be. It is different for everybody. But for those of you who can relate to this, hopefully it will give you some comfort because at the end, it's always all right. And whatever happens, you're going to learn so much and be a better performer, a better magician, and arguably a better person because of it. Thank you very much. Now, do please go and have a look at onlinemagic.co if you want to hang out with me most weeks. And and request things you want to learn on and learn from 800 videos I've made, we'll get over now in half an hour to the Miser's Dream live session. onlinemagic.co, like and subscribe. Thank you so much, everybody. It's very much appreciated. Have a look at them courses too. Cheers.